Oh, nice view. You know, we've got some great accurate rifles these days, but an accurate rifle doesn't do you much good if your scope can't keep up. The problem with scopes is, how do you know how much you need to pay to get a good one? A patron recently asked me that, so I thought I would dive in because I've got a lot of scopes. I review them for magazines and they're constantly coming in and out, and I got an opportunity to look at a lot of them. And over the years, I've figured out what we need to look for to identify what we need in a scope. Durability, optical quality, and not paying more money than we have to. Let's dive in and see what we can figure out about scope buying on this episode of Ron Spomer Outdoors. Well, you probably know the size of scope you want and for the use you need. So we're not going to get into that. We're just going to try to focus on how to judge a scope for quality. And I find two major things to check for: mechanical quality, optical quality. Let's do mechanical quality first. How do we know these scopes are good, solid, durable, repeatable? How are they going to perform once we stick them on a high-kicking rifle, for instance, or when we shoot them a lot or dial the turrets a lot? Will they last? Well, it's kind of a little magical box there that's pretty hard to see into, but you can with a flashlight. Just flip it over, shine that flashlight inside, and you can actually see parts of the scope. Now, you're not going to learn a lot by doing this, but you could see something really bad like scratch marks, stripped threads or heads on screws, or maybe some glue left inside. And you can even turn the power ring and see some parts moving inside. Basically, what you're looking for is neat and clean. You don't want to see inside there a bunch of scratches and anything that suggests shoddy workmanship. And you definitely don't want to see a goldfish swimming around in there. So give it a quick check like that. But your biggest check is going to be externally. Just look at the scope and feel it. Does it have a feel of quality? Does it feel solid? Then start manipulating all the moving parts. Turn that zoom dial. Is it smooth? Does it grind at all? Does it have any catch points? Take off the caps. Are they smooth? Then turn those turret dials. Listen to them and feel them. They should snap crisply. They shouldn't have a lot of lash to them. You shouldn't go past and have to come back. Once they lock into position, they should stay there. That suggests you've got some pretty good quality built into the unit. If it has a parallax dial, same thing, turn that. You're getting a good feel for the optical quality. Now, you need to find out whether that thing is going to perform mechanically on the range once you've got it on your rifle. Not a lot of stores are going to let you do that, but they might let you take it home and do an advanced test on whether the reticle is tracking as it should and whether the zoom range is changing the point of impact. And you can do that without mounting the scope on your gun. And I'm going to show you how in just a bit. Here's how we're going to test our reticle movement and our zoom. Get yourself a grid target. These are 1-inch squares. So the idea is we're going to put the reticle on one of the junctions of the inch squares, and then if we can lock that scope down so it doesn't move, when we turn our elevation and windage dials, they should move with 4 clicks. If you got a 1 1/4 MOA click adjust scope, as most of them are, you're going to watch that crosshair move across the target. So if you start in the center here, you go 1, 2, 3, 4 clicks to the crosshair should be right there. And you can take it on as far as you want to go, come back, count those clicks, it should come right back. Up, down, move it around, and you're going to see whether it's accurate or not. And now, if it's not accurate, don't freak out unless you're planning to do dialing for targeting at long ranges. Then it needs to be precise. But if you're just going to mount your scope, put it on your hunting rifle, sight it in, and leave it there, you never really have to turn those turrets anymore until maybe you switch loads or something. So you don't necessarily have to spend more money to get a scope that dials exactly a 1/4 MOA with every click. Just something that you can decide. So I would put this target at 100 yards because that's where you get your 1 MOA 1/4 clicks. Mount that target up, put that scope in. I'd build a wooden box like this and really anchor that thing down so it doesn't move. And then remove the reticles from your scope, or the covers off of the turrets of your scope. Look through it. Don't knock your other scope over. That's always a bad idea. And just do your turning and watch those crosshairs move. It really works pretty slick. You don't have to mount it on your rifle. You're not going to scratch it up. And if it doesn't work right, you want to take it back to the store, they'll probably take it back for you. Now, the next thing to check is the zoom. And again, you're going to use your target. This time, focus that scope wherever you want on the target and watch to see that the reticle stays there while you turn your power ring. So you go from 3x all the way up to 10x. The crosshair shouldn't move over an inch or up an inch or down an inch as you go through that zoom range. That's a nice thing to know. You don't want your scope to change its point of impact just because you zoomed it. There's one important test you can do without shooting that scope. Now, something else to look for in mechanical quality is the reputation of the brand. You know, there are a lot of guys who will say, brand X I've been using for the last 250 years and it never failed me. As that stuff piles up, you've got a pretty good clue that they've got a reputation for durability. And the other thing is their guarantee or their warranty. Are they warrantying it for a year for workmanship or just for parts, or are they warrantying it forever as long as you own it? Some of them now are warranting it forever for whoever owns it. It's really pretty impressive. Now, that doesn't guarantee that the scope is never going to malfunction or break, but it does tell you that they'll fix it. And if the guarantee says they'll do it for free, I like that. And it also suggests that they think they have built it well enough that they probably don't have to do a lot of repairs. So something worth looking at. What are the guarantees and what is the reputation of that particular brand? Now, the other thing you want to consider is what you're using that scope for. As I said earlier, if you've just got a fairly small scope on a rifle that's not kicking a lot, like a 223, 243, probably on up to about a 30-06, you can get by with some scopes of lesser build quality because there's not that much recoil to break them. But remember, recoil is cumulative. Anytime you're working a spring, that spring will weaken over time. So even just a little bit of recoil vibrates the erector tube inside of the main tube against the springs that are holding it back against the turrets. So the more you turret dial and the more you shoot, the more often you shoot, the sooner you're going to wear that scope out. So if you've got, say, a target rifle that you're going to shoot a lot or a competition rifle, you want a high quality scope that's going to last. Ditto if you've got a 375 H&H and up for recoil. So now we're going to go to optical quality, and obviously the scope companies make a big deal about optical quality because that's a selling point. Everybody wants a bright scope, right? But I think they overhype brightness. Yeah, brightness is good, but it's not as important as resolution and maybe even contrast. So let's just discuss these. Brightness obviously is the amount of light that gets through to your eye. And we all talk about big objective lens, let a lot of light in. Well, that does let a lot of light in, but magnification reduces the amount of light that gets to your eye. So if you have a high power scope, you are going to want a bigger objective because you've got to let more light get into the scope in order to get through that tiny hole you're going to make called the exit pupil when you crank up your power. So if I turn the power ring on a scope from wide open, like at a 3x or 4x, I've got a big exit pupil, a big circle of light coming into my eye. And that matches up with my pupil, and I can probably take more light than my pupil can take in. But if I dial it to 10 power, man, I'm going to start to lose that size and that exit pupil. Now, suddenly my eye's at 4 millimeters and this thing's at 2. That's not going to work. So the way you figure that out is mathematically the diameter in millimeters of the objective lens, this is a 50, divided by the magnification. It's at 10x, put it down here to 10 power. I now, 10 into 50, I've got a 5 millimeter diameter on my exit pupil. If my pupil is dilated to 5 millimeters, we got a beautiful matchup. I'm taking all the light in. But if my pupil is at 7 and this is down at 5, I'm missing some of it. So consider that when you're looking for brightness. But I think more important, anti-reflection coatings. When light strikes glass, 4% of it bounces off. Reflection loss. If you put an anti-reflection coating material on that lens, you can cut that loss in half. If you put another layer on, you cut it in half again and again and again. That is what they call anti-reflection coatings, multiple layers. So something to look for in a scope is advertised fully multi-coated. That means every air-to-glass surface inside that scope has those coatings, and that absolutely minimizes the reflection loss. You can't do any better than that. Now, you can't guarantee how many layers they put in their multi-layer. That might be just 2, but it might be as many as 6 or 7. Who knows? And you just sort of have to trust them and then look at the complete throughput of light. They might advertise their scope as this one passes 90% of the light through it, or this one passes 88% of the light, and this one might be 94. Whatever they're advertising, that's good to know. But then do a comparison side by side if you can. And don't just do it in the store. They always look good in the store. And they also look good in the middle of the day when there's plenty of light. If you can, wait until sunset. Look at the setting sun, and especially look into dark shadows underneath the sun somewhere and see what you can tell for detail. That's what really reveals a good optical quality in a scope and its effective brightness. So cloudy days, really nasty weather, you'll start to see the differences when you're looking through those scopes. But looking at that sun is a great way to test for how much anti-reflection coating they have in there. If you see a lot of orange haze and fog and fuzzy stuff, that suggests that they don't have really good anti-reflection coatings on their lenses. And let me tell you something about how many lenses are in some of these scopes. I have taken some apart and seen as many as 10 lenses in one scope. And imagine if you were losing 4% of your light at each one of those, and there were 10 of them. Oh my gosh. So that's why anti-reflection coatings are so important. Now, the next thing is resolution. This is sharpness. I would rather lose a little bit of light than sharpness. Sharp is what we really want. So resolution is what you see is what you get. It's a product of the quality of the lens, whether or not it has any bubbles in it or any kind of imperfections. And that's about impossible for us to determine other than just looking through the whole instrument and seeing if we've got a good sharp view. But resolution means you're going to be able to resolve a tiny little image way out there. And again, you'll see it, you'll know it, and if you can compare more than one scope on the same view, you're going to be able to tell. So do look for good resolution. The other thing you want is contrast, and that comes from those anti-reflection coatings. That's getting back to that orange haze when you look at the setting sun at flare and glare. The more of that you see in the scope, the more or the less contrast you have. What's the value of contrast? Other than getting rid of that foggy, glary look, it enables you to tell subtle differences in color tone between branches and antlers, for instance. And it really helps you pick out a deer. If you've got a low contrast scope, anything in the brown tans might all kind of look the same color. And you won't be able to detect an animal hiding in those shadows. But if you've got high contrast, things will jump out at you. So do look for that. And that, again, is a product of the anti-reflection coatings. Now, cost differences. When you've judged all that optical and mechanical quality and thought you've got a pretty good instrument in front of you, why is one of them that looked pretty good costing $500 and the next one of equal appearing quality is $1,000? Part of the reason might just be the brand name. There are some brands that are sort of boutique brands. They have a cachet, the best of the best, like a Porsche or a Viking stove instead of a GE stove. I don't know why anybody needs a $10,000 range in their kitchen, but some people like it. Well, it's the same with scopes. Some people are happy with a low-price scope. Others want the best of the best. Even if they can't recognize what it does better than the other ones, they just love having it on their rifle. And I would do the same if I had unlimited funds, so why not? But don't think that you have to spend just for a name. And the other reason some scopes are more expensive is simply the labor costs, depending on what country they were made in. Doesn't mean the labor quality wasn't any good or the workmanship wasn't any good, but some places have higher labor costs. And then there's some import costs, I'm sure, and shipping and all that sort of stuff adds up. So do consider those things, but mostly you want to look at that mechanical quality we talked about and the optical quality. And if those are looking good to you and you're looking through that scope and it all seems to fit, that might be your baby, regardless of the price. So, simple rule, harder your rifle kicks, the more money you probably want to put in your scope for the durability issues. And the more important your targeting competitions, longer range shooting, the more resolution you want. But, you know, like when we were kids, a Bubba scope for hunting deer out to 150 yards, it didn't matter a heck of a lot. With a light kicking rifle, a 243 with a cheap scope. I have a buddy who has the cheapest scope I think that Bushnell made back in the day, and we're talking 40 years ago. It was a Banner scope. just kind of the bottom of the line. He put that on a 270 and he shot it for about 10 years deer hunting. And then he put it on a 22-250 and he goes coyote and deer hunting with that. And he's had it on there for more than 30 years. He has never made an adjustment to it. It has stayed perfectly zeroed all that time other than switching from gun to gun. And that is a longevity for about $100 scope. So yeah, the inexpensive scopes can last on lighter kicking rifles. Don't think you have to spend $5,000. But if you do, bring that rifle and scope over because I want to see it. Hey, this is Ron Spomer. Thanks for watching. I invite you to subscribe to our channel. And if you can join us on Patreon, just go to patreon.com, Ron Spomer Outdoors. Join the Ron Spomer Outdoors community. Help us make these videos. We really appreciate it. Hunt honest and shoot straight.